Hi, I'm Barbara. Barbara Olive, nurse, healer, employee of God. I work for God. There we go. How does that work? But funnily enough, I have an aversion to the word healing. It's a very strange. So it's a strange aversion, because as soon as I hear the word healing, I have visions of women in purple flowy robes and smelling of incense, and that's not my understanding of healing. I was born having a spirit family, so I've been able to see and feel energy since I was little. So to talk about spirits and the use of spirits in healing doesn't kind of do it for me. That's part of my childhood that is normal. And to say as a child I believed in God, I think was taking it a little too far. My parents sent me to church, to Sunday school, even though they didn't go to church. And I had an argument with the priest about why, if God is around us all the time, do we have to come here on a Sunday afternoon to talk to him? And then the fact that the vicar stuck his hands in my knickers said to me, I don't trust this man. So, and I think sometimes in some ways this is in answer to the question of why do we not follow God? Because so many people have a bad experience with the name God, which is where I was as a child. And I didn't believe in a God because of the experiences that I'd had. So for me as a healer, where did my healing start? And it started when I found empathy for somebody else. Before that point, I had been in a constant state of survival. And that is why most people cannot do the things that you were asking. See, most of your antidotes are survival symptoms of survival. The pain is survival. Being lied to, survival. There's many different aspects that come into surviving. You cannot be creative. You cannot study. I was rubbish at school because I couldn't be creative and survive at the same time. It's an absolute impossibility. And that's why most people, when they fall into a diseased state, can't get out of it, because they instantly go into survival and they can't be creative to get out of it. So where am I going with this? The healing process, as I say, started with me being empathetic to a girl who wanted a bedpan in a hospital. I was a patient. And everybody was busy, and this poor little girl who had Down syndrome just wanted to go to the toilet and couldn't get out of bed. I gave her that bedpan. And the look and the hug and the smile that she gave me was all that I needed to say, I think I want to be a nurse. And that's how I started my healing. And I went to nursing school and became I think a pretty good nurse, but a nurse on the front line, and the front line of trauma, disaster, casualty, intensive care. So, pretty traumatic life and death situations. And I saw things during those years of working as a nurse which questioned my belief in what is going on here when I'm having to look after somebody for 18 hours straight, keeping them alive, making sure the ventilator is making them breathe, that they've got drips going in that is keeping their blood pressure up, another one that's bringing it down, maybe dialysis, you name it, you're just constantly keeping them alive. And yet you can see their soul sitting on the chair. What's going on here? They're dead. They've gone already. All you're doing is keeping this body alive. And that kind of realization makes you kind of think, what the hell am I doing here? Why is this? There is more to this. And I think that's the question that most of the population don't even get to. What is the purpose of my life? What am I doing here? What is happening? And something has to stop you to ask that question of yourself before you can even ask, is there a God? Because it starts with you. From that years and years of nursing, and being guided on a daily basis by my guides, spirits that don't have bodies, people that I took my study from, my knowledge, my wisdom, because I didn't trust human beings, but I trust spirit impeccably. They are my teachers. I don't trust human beings. They always have an ulterior motive, like your politicians, like your boss. They all have an ulterior motive. They don't care about you. They care about themselves. And during the process of my life of being a healer, if you like, taking people in, seeing clients, patients, and helping them to come through a diseased thought process, a diseased feeling, could be tissue. I started to use essences, flower essences that you make purely by taking the flower, the water, and asked of my spirit guides, how do these really work? Tell me how they work. And what they showed me through a mapping, a format, a formula, a matrix is what I now see as that divine intelligence. This is how we all work. We all have the same cellular energetic structure, every single one of us. And that is what I believe is God. And because of that, every single cell in our body has God in it. We are all part of God. But I believe that when we were put on this planet, we had to survive. So it goes back to the survival process. We had to be programmed to survive. Therefore, we had to have an ego which says, I may be better than God. That's what your ego is. I can do this better than something that I can't see. And I have only me to look after me. To believe in God requires a lot of trust. And from what I've been saying just now, I didn't have any trust in humans as a child. I only trusted my spirit helpers. And even then, I didn't believe in a God. It's only since I have seen this matrix and how it fits together and how it can pull us into this place of peace that I can see God. The only way to have a peaceful world is to let God help us to be peaceful. And that is inside every single one of us. But you have to stop controlling your control over God. Does that make any sense? So, do you want to just cut me for a test?
Quick, roll the cameras.
Say that again.
Say that again. I believe that Jesus coming along 2,000 years ago was a bit of a test as to how we as human beings would take the messages. And I don't think the messages were taken all that well. And all we do is fight over who's right, who's wrong, who's God's right. And I believe, this is my own personal belief, that the second coming that everybody's waiting for is the uncovering of the God in you. No other man, no second Jesus coming. It's the uncovering of this God element in every single one of us that I believe is the second coming. And I think that it's coming quite soon. So what makes me believe in that? Well, this matrix that I have been taught by Spirit and that I've been working with for the past 10 years, I've done my over 10,000 hours with the mastery of this matrix, understanding it, working with it, understanding how it works. And there are 3 distinct components to it. And we have, as human beings, 3 distinct parts: mind, body, spirit. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. This is your ultimate Trinity. But you have a physical body, a spiritual body, and a membrane. The spirit part is your spiritual body. That is the driver, your master, if you like. It's the part of you that knows everything. It's the part of you that holds the memory of all the lives that you've had in previous lives, on this planet or other planets, wherever it comes from, wherever that memory comes from. You have your physical body, so that's your very physical human body, your DNA, the DNA of your parents and their ancestors. And that holds the memory of your ancestors, your very physical ancestors. It also is the challenge to you, because your ancestors are the challenge. The memory that your body holds is a huge challenge, because that's where a lot of the disease comes from. So if you have high blood pressure, that will most probably run in your family. So that is an attitude, an emotional issue that stops your heart energy from working properly. And that is given to you by your ancestors, your family. And so it drives you. It's the challenge that you have to be an okay human being. Your human body is also your ego, which is, I can do better. I can do better than God. If I want this, I can do this. You're taught, the Americans are very good at this. You can do anything you want. You can be anything you want. Whereas the British, on the other hand, play that down. You can't be anything. It's more like it. And yes, you can prove to yourself that yes, if you keep pumping weights, you can be a massive bodybuilder. You can use the adrenaline that your body uses to push you into the most extreme circumstances. I as a nurse, have pulled somebody out of a car into a wheelchair because they had an infarct, a heart attack, and I had taken them out of the car on my own, taken them into casualty, pulled them on the floor, started working on them on the floor, and it took 4 porters to pick this man up off of the floor and put him on a trolley. How did I get him out of the car? It's pure adrenaline. That's your ego. I can do this. It wasn't God that helped me to do that. Might have been God that said, you can do this, but God didn't give me the energy to do that. That was the adrenaline surging through me that gave me the energy to do that, to pull that man out. On the other hand, when you're trying to help somebody go from a place of despair into a place of peace, that is not adrenaline that helps you do that. That is God. That's the energy, a calming energy that clears their processes of fear, of pain, of hurt, of conflict, and says it's okay. It's like you're giving them a spiritual cuddle. And you take away all the pain that they're feeling, even if it is just for a moment. And that gives them some hope that, wow, if I can have it just for that moment, it can be there. The third part of this matrix is this membrane, and the membrane is the interface between the physical and the spiritual. It's where the information crosses over from one to the other, and that is where most of the memory is held. Excuse me. Water. You are about 73% water. And water holds a memory. As books by, can't think of the man's name, the first name, Emoto, who's photographed crystals of water and the effect that those crystals have when you say a derogatory word, and then they take the photograph of the crystal, or if you say a beautiful word like peace or love, and how those crystals really change. And the membrane, or the memory within us, is the memory of every bacteria you've ever come across, every virus, every hurt and pain that you have within you is held in that water, in that membrane. Your membrane, as I said, is the mind. It's the interface. It's the translator. A lot of children with behavioural problems that have been diagnosed as on the autistic spectrum have a problem within their translators in the membrane. And those translators are having a hard time helping their physical bodies understand what their spirit is trying to tell them. And the easiest way that I can describe it is going into a computer mode of their spirit works on Windows XP, and their physical body is working on Windows 95. And their membrane is trying to translate that information. So if you like, their spirit is way ahead of their ancestral DNA. So they've if you like, they've got a job to do. The children are normally very, very, very gifted children. But it's like their humanness isn't equipped enough to deal with it. And my own son was sent into that autistic spectrum by having what I believe was a response to a vaccination that he was given, his first triple antigen, which resulted in him collapsing. And basically I was sent along my path of trying to help him, which sent me down this path of where I am now, with understanding essences and energy. And it was the story ends very well with him, so I know it can be done. So there's these three parts of us. Those three parts of us have to work together. And when they work together, we then create inherently in ourselves a force field that keeps us free from disease, free from pain, free from hurt. When those three bodies work together, then we can have this force field around us. You can call it an aura, you can call it anything. But that force field is then your protection. If those three bodies don't work together, you don't have a protective field. When those three bodies all work together, you can then start to see where that person's consciousness is. Only when those three bodies work together perfectly, the osmological balance between those three bodies is perfect in harmony, you have a consciousness that helps you ask the questions, which is, it could be any question. Thomas was talking about studying being the best thing. But unless you have a form of consciousness, you don't even know what you want to study. You don't even have the ability to ask a question, which is where you were asking about where does apathy come in. So the memory should be working perfectly fluid, so your membrane should be perfectly fluid if you are in your truth. If you believe lies about yourself, if you tell lies about yourself, the membrane, the fluid, becomes thicker, and therefore the energy can't get through. When the energy can't get through the membrane, you end up with like a split personality. You do this, and yet you know it's wrong. That's how we get evil personalities. And that evil personality can come from just a minor thing to a child stealing a Mars bar in a sweet shop, to holding up a bank at gunpoint. And you can tell yourself anything to convince yourself that it's okay. And that's what I mean by telling fibs or lies to yourself. If you believe those fibs, it's like the defiant child whose parent is hitting them, and the defiant child says to the mother or the father that's hitting them, "This doesn't hurt. You can't hurt me." The child then starts to believe, "You can't hurt me." And that's when it starts to build up this, if you like, protection, this skin of defiance, the lie. So this, knowing how this, these three levels work with each other, and knowing which essences work on different aspects of that matrix, I believe that we can all uncover that God within us easily by just taking an energy medicine, as opposed to a drug that is actually exacerbating the problem, because that's telling your body a lie. If you, let's say for instance, you are predisposed to having diabetes. Diabetes runs in your family. You get older. Ooh, look at this. It looks like I've now developed diabetes. Your doctor says, okay, I can give you tablets. And as soon as you start to take the medicine, your body says, I don't have to fight this anymore because the medicine is doing it for me. So you're not trying, your body stops trying to work as it should work as soon as you take that medicine. Same with a headache. We all get so used to taking paracetamol because we've got a headache, we've got a deadline, we need to get this work out. Our boss says that we really need to go there. If we don't go to work, we don't get paid. So we get used to taking all sorts of things so that we can carry on doing what we should do. Our bodies can heal themselves if only you give them the space to do it. And if we do it from when we're children, we don't end up with severe chronic problems when we're older. So, does God exist? Is there an intelligent design? Is there an intelligence out there? Yes, I firmly believe there is. I didn't come up with this. I wish I was that clever. I was taught this. And from that teaching, I now believe, as I didn't when I was a little one, that there is a God, and that without this intelligence we wouldn't be here. Now I've seen that matrix changing in the last, since 2006, and maybe even before that. It's been changing. But in the last 2 months it has changed more than I have ever seen it change. And I believe that this is what the Mayans predicted. Thomas was talking about a memory of the future. And the Mayans predicted it is the end of civilization as we know it. And I believe that this is the uncovering of the God within you.
The next paper we're going to look at in this symposium on divine intelligence has been submitted in absentia, and the authors can't be here, sadly. But they've sent in a paper which I'm going to read out on their behalf, and also sent in some evidence which I'll be sharing a little bit. Now, it's two papers, two authors in this paper. One is called Dr. Hugh Fairman, MA, a retired surgeon from the southwest of the United Kingdom, who was a scholar at St John's College in Cambridge. He studied clinical medicine at the Royal London Hospital and trained in the NHS in the southwest and in South Wales. He then worked as a surgeon in the NHS in hospitals in Cornwall and retired in 2002, although he was still doing clinical work up until 2005. And his interest is now in using some of the skills he gained as a surgeon and researching essentially what we could call parapsychology. One of the big topics to do with divine intelligence, one of the areas of research, is to do with parapsychology, which is a field of psychological research into the paranormal, evidence for life after death. Barbara was talking about spirit, mind and body and the interactions, and was talking about spirit guides and so on. So people like Hugh and his partner are working on evidence of those kind of realms. So he's working with someone called Tina Laurent, who is a very well-known psychic medium and who's been practicing research in extrasensory voice perception for many years, quite well known, has worked in Edinburgh and all over Britain and internationally. Now, it's Tina Laurent that has developed a new method for, let's say, parapsychological research. And she's developed a particular photographic technique using digital photography, which is able to take images of what Hugh and Tina are arguing in this paper. Consists of essentially what seem to be spirit phenomena. Right. Now, so the paper is really a description of some of these photographs. Now, I'm going to have to describe them to you. I've looked at, there's about 20 or 30 photographs in this, which have been sent to go along with the paper, and if we had, if they were here in person, they could have presented this as a PowerPoint thing with the photographs, and to really do it justice, you should see them. One of the first ones is this one, which is called Paris. These things are very strange, and if you see this image, it definitely looks like a human figure. What is happening in these photographs is that Tina, who takes them, using steam against a black background, and then takes a digital photograph of images which appear in the swirling clouds of steam. Now, I wrote back immediately saying, are these not just kind of images that randomly are occurring in steam? I mean, okay, they may look like flying swans or pirates or whatever, but I mean, that doesn't mean there are spirit pirates out there. Surely it's just steam images. But and obviously, to me, there's still a doubt. I'm being a skeptic as well. But Hugh, who trained as I said, as a surgeon, argues that in the paper that the ability to discern imagery, similar to what a surgeon has when looking at X-ray photographs, and there's an image of a skull, and Hugh makes the point in this paper that only a trained surgeon can look at an X-ray photograph and actually diagnose it. When you look at this as a layperson, you won't see anything. So he was able to say this skull shows this and this malformations, and that bit of surgery is needed. Whereas as a layperson, we can't see it. He argues that discerning and reading these psychic photographs is a skill which you don't get immediately. Well, I suspend judgment. And I will say that the more I've looked at these photographs, the more convinced I've been that there is something there. When I first looked at them, I thought, swirling clouds of steam, what's the big deal here? But when you actually seriously look at them, some of them are pretty extraordinary. And we know that digital photography's brought up this thing about orbs. People are now photographing orbs in strange ways. Some people can do it. Some places they seem more frequent and so on. This seems to be an extension beyond the orb phenomenon. This is something that maybe is being picked up. So anyway, when the paper goes on to say that this picture, the Paris, they call it Paris, they give names to these photographs, right? Paris, the Trojan hero, because he looks a very beautiful figure, was a black swan event. It has form and strong colour. One can easily see a face and a pair of arms holding a bright red apple-like fruit. And he describes the image, and that's why they called it Paris. Anyway, from these humble beginnings, when Hugh and Tina started collaborating, they've built up a large portfolio. The current situation, therefore, is is that basically they're compiling this. They don't, in a sense, know what to do with it all. Here's phenomenon from the grassroots of parapsychological research. Now, the technique is that the emulsion, so to speak, the photographic emulsion film, is these rolling clouds of hot steam. I asked, did she see the images in her mind at the same time as they're appearing in reality? So this is an extrasensory, skilled medium. Was she seeing these pictures which were then forming? I mean, one possible explanation for these phenomena is, yes, they are there, but she's projecting them to some extent. They're coming from her mind, yeah? Anyway, she said in answer to that, very occasionally I have seen a recognisable image flash into the steam before it is seen in the photograph. Well, that's interesting. Maybe we're dealing here with some kind of thought telepathy that she's visualising these things. One could experiment around that. Other people could go and visualise other things and maybe come up with different pictures. The real big question is, so what? What are the implications? And particularly in relation to these phenomena, what does it tell us about the spiritual world and about divine intelligence? Well, this is the meat of the paper, so to speak. This is the evidence now, the meat. I can only very briefly, they say, outline what we think is going on here in physical terms, with no corroborative evidence or detail from the literature. We think that all creation is supported by an omnipresent information field, IF, that we simply call the field, in uppercase. This contains and manipulates all the information that pertains to the multiverse, a postulation of the many worlds theory of quantum physics. Our cosmos is held within its own quantum field, as a subsection of the field, with capital letters, the big field, which in turn contains and maintains all current information regarding this cosmos of ours. And like a placenta, both isolates it from contamination from other universes and maintains it. The principles that quantum physics has elucidated, entanglement, superposition, non-locality or action at a distance, and the Bose-Einstein condensate, are also an indication of how we think the field actually handles information. The field is a state of information status alone and is a virtual reality from our viewpoint, whilst our cosmos is sited in material reality. We think that the strange wave-particle duality of quantum physics arises from another principle, which is that of the oscillation between the material reality and the virtual reality of these nanoparticles, such as electrons and photons. As if the borders of the universe were fuzzy, quantum physics postulates particle pairs winking in and out of existence, and has evidence for it, Hawking radiation and the Casimir effect. We think that everything oscillating in a similar fashion at the nanoparticle level on timescales of less than attoseconds probably is fast approaching the Planck second, which is the smallest unit of time. And it is by this means such particles remember their properties, i.e. the laws of physics. Quantum theory discoveries as regarding entanglement indicate that this information can be parcelled up into bubbles and on occasion shared. We think that a single living cell is a functioning quantum computer in effect. Water has been recently demonstrated to possess quantum properties in the liquid state at ambient temperatures. This suggests that water is not just a reactant, a medium for some very complicated biochemistry, but is something else of crucial import. Individual cells may combine to form larger organisms, and by doing this, their individual states entangle to include both the self, a liver cell, say, and the whole body, that is, yourself, say. All such information is ongoing from such computations, and is held in the local quantum field, and behind it in the field itself. All of a person's current life history is thus held in a bubble state or an information packet. We call these concepts IPACs for short. These IPACs exist at all scales, from electrons to atoms to proteins to cells to people to species to the cosmos. And they all oscillate at their own timescales. For humans, this oscillation period is around 70 years, and we call this process reincarnation. Increasingly, quantum theory-based phenomena are being demonstrated as being active in living organisms, and that these processes are not just confined to the lab at cold temperatures, but are also at large in the natural world. Our personal IPAC bubbles also entangle with those of other people that we interact with, and thus start to share a history of information in common. This process of IPAC entanglement is a physical description of what is called love, at its highest form, the love of God. All life, since inception, has remained in contact with the greater field, since this is the oldest form of computation that there is. Why are we not now more aware of this fact then? This is because our conscious minds are new in evolutionary terms and have therefore been cut off from the much older brain networks that are still plugged in, as it were. These networks are very ancient, and we recognize them as the autonomous nervous system in medicine and anatomy. This has happened because at one time our species were prey animals, but once the logical language-based planning and foreseeing networks of the left cerebral cortex were up and running, as it were, there was an immediate conflict of interests. Animals, unlike us, treat imaginary dream-style images when awake as being real, and as prey, our early ancestors would then simply make a bolt for it. Somehow evolution had to block off the connections between our higher centres and our early ape minds simply in order to allow such planning for hunting purposes to take place at all, even at the discussion phase. It is this inhibitory process that has cut off our sense of consciousness from the older, deeper mental networks that can still use the ancient mechanisms. As the Bible said, we ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge and were cast out of the Garden of Eden. It may be a metaphor or parable, but it is very accurate, and it is recapitulated in every person, in every life, as they pass from infancy to childhood to adulthood, and lose their earliest recollections in the process, as the whole of the subconscious is created. And this is why we have a subconscious at all in the first place. This inhibition process can be reversed during meditation, trance or hypnotic states, which then permits field access. Animal life, on the other hand, maintains close field contact, a process we call instinct. The field, therefore, is what we call God, the source of divine intelligence. But it is, however, a thing in itself, and like the sea, it is not any kind of personal being in any way, any more than the sea is a living Neptune or Poseidon. However, within the field are contained all the IPACs of all life forms within the multiverse, with their individual histories, and that includes every human being. Like all life, we too cycle and recycle, and hence we are in the field, and the field is in us, in a small part. This in turn means that there is an IPAC bubble in the field labelled humanity, and within that IPAC a you, which is taking a very personal interest in your welfare. It is at this level that the concept of a personal God actually arises, since the IPAC or person is, in fact, you, or more accurately, the IPAC of all your previous existences put together. The great importance of parapigs is that this technique is showing the texting processes of information transfer in action and fixing it for all to see at leisure. It is in a sense therefore evidence for the validity of these ideas. Richard Dawkins wrote a brilliant book called The Blind Watchmaker, detailing how the cosmos can self-boot a complex machine that we call a person. I would not change a single word save one. The title I might suggest should become The Blind IPAC Maker. Like the familiar iPads or laptops, we too make our information bubbles or IPACs, which are the emails, Facebook and tweets of our age. They too go to an iCloud in the sky, where they are held and then reincarnated in another similar machine or body. It is all remarkably similar in many ways. What parapics are showing us is that the use of quantum properties of simple water can enable us now to see the texting in action. And we too can access the contents of the cloud, or all of history, as it were. If we only knew how to control it all, we might find it's a powerful tool for seeing the future. Future developments. There are two sides to this tool that we've called parapics. The side of the mind involved and that of the technology. And there's much to explore. There are many questions to be answered. Let us look at mind first. Can anyone do this? We think the answer is similar to playing the game of golf. Okay, so you can get the gist of it, but not everybody can play well. You can explain the rules, but then you have to actually practice it. We are sure that in the subconscious mind networks, the drive is there that can boost this level of the mind into dominance. Meditation, trance and hypnosis can play a role in this. So as you cultivate your mental powers, I think what he's saying is that you can access the field more effectively. So the other thing they're talking about here is using different kinds of cameras. With the cameras, one could suggest stereoscopic positioning of multiple synchronized cameras. So maybe they could, at the moment these pictures are just taken using one digital camera. What if they had several taking images from different angles simultaneously? Also perhaps the use of the video recorder, filming it with stroboscopic flash at varying intervals and then examining resultant still frames for progressive changes. Flash intensity and duration may have influences. So can this technique be developed and taken further? That's the question. So it's interesting. The conclusion is there is no conclusion. It's ongoing research, and they're still working on developing both the technology and then the implications. I think if people are interested, I haven't had time, or the ability to show the photographs really. You need to see these photographs fully. We'll put them on the web or somehow. In fact, both Tina has a number of websites with a lot of these photographs already on, so people, if they're interested, can access them and make up their own minds about the phenomenon and the implications. And obviously lots of questions arise, for discussion. The question, having read the paper and looked at the photographs, the question that occurs to me is, I suppose the fundamental question is, are these images being projected in some way by Tina, who is a psychic medium? Or are we to assume that spirits are kind of filling all space all the time, and it's just when you have some steam around you can actually see them? Either hypothesis is requires some further evidence,
Divine intelligence. Divine means godlike in Latin deus, sois in Greek, div in Persian and diva in Sanskrit. And intelligence is intelligence. Well, there's an overlap because of the deities are often identical with the powers and forces that are credited to them. Divinity always carries positive attributes like goodness, beauty, justice. In monotheistic faith, there's an equivalent cohort of ill-intent supernatural beings and powers such as demons and other ill forces. When there's something in existence, the opposite also exists. Well, I would like to explore divine intelligence in a Chinese context. Well, in Chinese folklore, everything starts with the emperor, the Jade Emperor. He was the ruler of heaven and all realms of existence below, including the realm of mankind and hell. He started in the human world, but became superhuman. There are many myths and different versions about but one of them goes like this. When he was born, he brought an invisible light with him that could be seen in all the kingdom. He was very beneficial to all his subjects, and when he grew older, he started cultivating the Tao, because he felt that he couldn't help all people. He retreated into a mountain cave and cultivated his Tao. He passed 3,200 trials, each lasting 3 millions of years. Now, we don't operate or function on these time scales, but a powerful evil entity started a war with the heavenly characters and immortals and deities, and the emperor, just having finished his trials, overthrew the evil force and stood victorious due to the deeper and wiser cultivation, not for might but for benevolence. Because of this, the Jade Emperor was declared the supreme sovereign of all. But we also in this world have a lot of good principles in justice, correctness, wrongly directed. One only needs to think of structures that don't work, governments, economics, religions, medicine. If divine intelligence applied here for good, there were nature sets that perfect example assimilates the perfect examples that nature sets, and it all would be much clearer. Why is it not? So it seems that the right understanding is missing. The whole concept of health and removal, curing of ill, is a story of good common sense and of a keen spirit seen everywhere in nature. There are religious aspects in healing, and most of it is painless and very effective. The Chinese are known for their old culture, silk, cooking and medicine, to name a few. Each art in nature and observation applied, brought to aspects of perfection attained through the will of learning and understanding, the intelligence at work. This all developed naturally, by honoring and slowly developing systems, understanding and keeping things in the positive perspective from awareness, and many oneness gained in these circles of knowledge, never forgotten where they came from, knowing the past, where they are, knowing the present, where they go to, knowing the future. As the story tells, understanding of divinity as individuals and as people.